as well as a number of speakers today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started with acknowledging some of our guests. I know that we will be hearing from Senator Cardin in just a moment, but I always like to take the opportunity to acknowledge our senators as they typically join us at some point or another during the meeting. So I see Senator Elfruff. I know we have Senator Beidel, Senator Riley, Senator Rosapep, and Senator Simon Nair. So if they join us at some point during this morning's meeting, we thank them for joining us because we realize that it is a team effort. I also see folks from County Executive Pittman's office, Peter Barron. I see Miss Jessica Cook, who we're always happy to have on representing our illustrious senior senator, Senator Cardin. I see some folks from Anne Arundel County Public School System. I see Miss Ortiz joining us. And if I missed anyone, I will certainly try to get back. I see Miss Lage from Anne Arundel County Parks, who will be speaking to us a little bit later. So welcome, 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 welcome. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with the Pledge of Allegiance and prayer. Delegate Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Merciful God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. As we think about the blessings of life, we especially pray for all those who have been hurt or who are hurting and need help. We ask your blessings for our work. May our better angels always prevail over political tensions. We ask for your insight and protection in the weeks to come as we serve our shared county and state. Give us wisdom, compassion, and charity to work together for the common good. May all that is done this day and this session be for the greater honor and glory. Amen.
Amen. So with that, next I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce to everyone, but I know everyone is very familiar with our senior senator from Maryland, Senator Ben Cardin, who does such incredible work on behalf of all Marylanders. We are so happy, Senator, to have you come before us and provide remarks to the Anne Arundel County delegation. So with that, Senator Cardin, I will turn the floor over to you.
I got everything set up for you.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
This went well. Western Maryland went well, so that's good.
Jessica, we can hear you, and the senator has the floor.
Right here. That's pretty good timing. I just walked in. So how are you?
Doing well this morning, Senator. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you very much. Thank you for the courtesy. I just literally walked in from the PACE breakfast this morning with the Western Maryland. So it's good to be with you. I'd rather be in person. And I recognize that we're doing everything still on WebEx. And next year, let's make sure we do this in person. I think we're getting close to near the end of this. Again, I look forward to always working with you. You met Jessica, who's my eyes and ears in Anne Arundel County, and I appreciate everything that she's doing in our office. She's relatively new, replacing Heather Campbell. So nobody can replace Heather Campbell, but Jessica will do her very best. Let me start by saying it is Team Maryland. Our federal delegation works very closely together as a team. I just left Senator Van Hollen at the Western Maryland PACE breakfast. Work very closely with Dutch and John Sarbanes and and Anthony Brown, and of course, Steny Hoyer. It really is a team effort. I want to start a little bit unusual because I want to make sure we get to any of the local issues that you're concerned about. But I must tell you, our attention is really focused on Ukraine. We admire greatly the courage of the people of Ukraine standing up to Mr. Putin, defending their country, defending the sovereignty of their country. The courageous and inspirational leadership of President Zelensky, sacrificing his own personal safety for his country. It's really, I think, an inspiration to all of us. And Mr. Putin has done something that we have not been able to do ourselves, and that is unify ourselves to preserve democracy. So we stand united with the people of Ukraine, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure they have everything they need to defend themselves. We're going to provide the humanitarian need. We're going to take care of the refugees, and we're going to be in there for the short and long term. Ultimately, Mr. Putin will lose. Ukraine will win. It will take some time, and we recognize that, and we're with them. I want to also point out President Biden gave a State of the Union address this past week. He talked about Ukraine. He also talked about the coronavirus, and I'd be more than happy to fill you in on that, but I think we're coming to near the end of the coronavirus issues. We still have to be smart about it, but we want to make sure that we get through this safely and can get our country back to a much more normal set of circumstances. But we also have to recognize that we got through this virus with keeping our economy afloat. Many thought that would be impossible. We were able to. We created a lot of new jobs, but we have challenges. And the major challenges has to deal with the cost centers that American families are facing. And we are laser focused on trying to deal with that. So let me just start with some of the recap. Under the American Rescue Plan, Arundel County received $120 million for a total during the aid packages of about $221 million. We know that County Exec Pittman appreciates that. We know that's been able to maintain essential services, and that was our intent. In addition to the $221 million that was received in the county, the Department of Education in Anne Arundel County received $169 million. And all that does not even include money that went into broadband, money that went into renter's assistance. So we have provided a substantial amount of funds for Anne Arundel County. We're now implementing the bipartisan infrastructure bill. That's $6 billion coming to the state of Maryland, $4.1 billion for roads and highways, $1.7 billion for transit, money for the airport, money for the Northeast Corridor of Amtrak, more money for broadband. Included in the infrastructure bill was $238 million for the Chesapeake Bay program. That's an unprecedented amount of money coming in for the Bay program. So we have real opportunities as a result of the infrastructure bill. In addition, for the first time in over a decade, we have congressional earmarks, and we have money in this budget to provide for stormwater management in the northern part of the county. That should be approved, I hope, by as early as next week. But we're not finished. We have to deal with the Build Back Better agenda, which are the cost centers that have to be dealt with. That's affordable housing. That's affordable prescription medicines. It's affordable childcare. Those types of issues we still need to deal with. I've been particularly pleased to work in regards to the small business issues, and I'll be more than happy to address what we've been doing in legislation we still have pending to help American small businesses. We have to deal with voting rights, and might want to touch upon that. But in the interest of time, Mr. Chairman, let me yield at that point to questions that you might have, or to make sure I'm mindful of your busy agenda.
So Senator Cardin, thank you for that quick update, and I'll open the floor for questions from members of the delegation, but I would be remiss if I didn't let you know that while Jessica Cook may be new, she has hit the ground running, and we are happy to have her on board working with her. So just a quick shout out to Jessica, and the first question will be from Delegate Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Cardin, very good to see you. Hello. I just wanted to pass on a question that I received from a Marylander, and it was regarding the safety of Americans and what type, if we are prepared for any threat to a local grid or to, anything here in America. And if you could just expand on that and any words of prevention that you can share with us would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that question. It is very timely. Let me first point out that our intelligence community had been able to predict just about everything that Mr. Putin was going to be able to do and the effectiveness of what he was able to do. So this playbook was very much exposed. So it's not a surprise to see a lot of the things that he's done. It doesn't diminish the tragedy of the circumstances. In one area, we expected him to be more aggressive than he's been to date, and that is in cyber attacks. We thought that he would be more aggressive in the use of cyber attacks, particularly in Ukraine. He has not been as aggressive as we thought. But we do anticipate that there could be cyber attacks against the United States and against Europe. So we are on extra precaution. Just this past week, just yesterday, President Biden signed into law a cyber bill to beef up our private industry protections against cyber attacks. We have the best cyber defense in the world, and it's located right here in Maryland, right here in Anne Arundel County. So you are the center for cyber security in the world. So we are confident that we'll be able to protect ourselves, but we do anticipate that Russia, Mr. Putin, particularly because things aren't going as well as he had planned, particularly because I don't think he anticipated there would be the type of unity globally in sanctions against the Russian economy. And the Russian economy is really hurting very badly as a result of these sanctions. So we anticipate he'll strike out, and we think he will attempt certain cyber activities or certain disruptions in regards to the United States. So we're prepared for it, but obviously we're going to have to wait to see what he does. But this is certainly would not be a surprise if he tried to interfere in a cyber way with Americans' financial system.
Thank you. I appreciate your answer.
Delegate Bagnall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Cardin, for being here today. I wanted to circle back. I know you started to touch on voting rights. And of course, we know that all politics is local, but voting rights is both local and national. And given sort of the shift in priorities with what's happening in Ukraine and with the continued COVID relief response, how are we going to not just secure voting rights, but also combat the level of propaganda that we have experienced in the last few election cycles?
Well, thanks for the question. There is no higher priority than protecting our democratic institutions, and our fundamental democratic institutions is the ability of Americans to have their votes cast and counted properly. So there's nothing more important than voting protection. So we recognize this is being challenged today. Let me just compliment the Maryland General Assembly. You all have been proactive in helping people to vote. Unlike 19 states in the country, which have been moving in the wrong direction as far as encouraging more voter participation. And the challenge with these 19 states is that it is very obvious that their plan is not the integrity of the voting system. It's basically to make it more challenging for certain people to be able to cast their votes. And that's very, very upsetting. So we have two bills in Congress that we are trying to pass. One of them is one that's authored by your own Congressman, John Sarbanes, who's the principal sponsor. It passed the House, that would establish certain national standards on early voting, on voting by mail, on drop boxes, on registration, on those types of issues. Also deals with dark money and redistricting. That legislation has stalled in the Senate, and the prognosis of it passing is not great, because we would have to change. We have no Republicans who support it, and would require us to change the filibuster rule. And we have two of our colleagues on the Democratic side that won't vote to change the filibuster rule. So it's unlikely we can move it in its current form. The second bill is the Voting Rights Act, which is a response to the Shelby County decision by the Supreme Court that dealt with sections 4 and 5 of the Voting Rights Act, the pre-certification. It's again unlikely we'll be able to get that bill passed for the same reason. Now, having said all that, I'm part of a bipartisan group of senators who are trying to find what we can get done in a bipartisan manner. So we're looking at the Electoral Count Act, which is how the Congress takes the results of the state and certifies the election. Was the focal point for the January 6th insurrection. We also are looking at clarifying Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act that deals with the right of private action against the legislation that impedes certain protected groups the rights to vote. We're also looking at other aspects of voting security, protection of election workers, certification procedures, et cetera. And so far, we are moving at a slow pace, but we are trying to see whether we can't come up with a bipartisan bill and get it passed. I'm part of that effort. I would like to see both of the major bills passed as they were passed in the House, but recognize we're not going to be able to get that. Let's see what we can get done.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Delegate Kipke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for being here today. And I appreciate any efforts that you provide in the Senate that are bipartisan. I think the country is increasingly fed up with both parties. The number of unaffiliated voters continues to surge, even here in Maryland. And both parties, yours and mine, continue to lose voters for a whole assortment of reasons. With that theme of bipartisanship, I want to ask you specifically about America's reliance on gasoline that is imported from Russia. I've read that America sends $700 million a year to Russia, to Putin, for gasoline. And so far, there seems to be, under the Biden administration, restrictions on domestic production of fuel. And I just want to, is anybody in, obviously my party is all for it. I'm just wondering in a bipartisan way with what's going on in the world. I know that some of the extremists in the Democratic Party just want to shut off natural gas and all that. Like, can you provide some balanced perspective from your side of politics? What's going on nationally to get us away from relying on Russian fuel? Thank you.
Well, Nick, first of all, let me agree with your point. We are way too divided along partisan lines, and the voters are fed up with this, and you're for good reason. So I agree with you completely. We have to work together and get things done. I think Mr. Putin has brought us closer together. Just this past week, I've joined with Senator Wicker. We hope to be able to include in the omnibus appropriation bill the strengthening and reauthorization of the Magnitsky sanctions, the bill that I authored, that is the personal sanctions that are being used by President Biden today to sanction Mr. Putin and his oligarchs. I've joined with Senator Portman in bipartisan legislation that would cut off Russia from normal trade relations with the United States. We expect to mark up that bill as early as next week in the Senate. I agree with you. We should not import one drop of oil from Russia. I'm with you 100% on that. I think that's ridiculous. We shouldn't be done that prior to this invasion, but certainly now we need to stop that. We don't need it. Let me make one point, though, that we may disagree on. If we just increase our current domestic production of energy, we have enough that we don't need to rely on imported oil from Russia or any country. So it's not necessary to build a new pipeline. It's not necessary to do offshore drilling. It's not necessary to do any of these additional steps. And by the way, any of those would take years before we would get the results of those actions. We have enough domestic capacity today just to increase it in order to be energy independent. And by the way, with natural gas, as you pointed out, to help our allies. We have much more natural gas than we need for ourselves. So I'm 100% with you on that. And thank you for raising it. And I think that Mr. Putin probably has brought us closer together.
Thank you.
So not seeing any other question, Senator Cardin, I will, I guess, offer a comment. And you mentioned about how the world is coming together and the importance of alliances. And I remember back in 2000, I was stationed in Germany, young major in Germany. And I remember the outpouring of support from our NATO allies, and particularly Germany, after the USS Cole bombing. I was stationed at Landstuhl when most of the casualties were brought into Landstuhl. And just the outpouring of support by our German friends certainly left a lasting impact on me in terms of the importance of alliances and in terms of the importance of us working together internationally, but as to your point and your comments with Delegate Kipley, even here locally. And I think that it's great to see in Maryland how we're able to do that. And I'm sure you're well aware of that from your time in the House, how we are able to sort of do that here locally. And certainly we'd love to see that more at the federal level. But again, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to come and join us today. And we're certainly incredibly grateful for all the things that you and the Maryland delegation are doing for us at the federal level. Fort Meade NSA is in my district. 295 runs right through it. So we're, as I mentioned to Senator Van Hollen, we're certainly grateful for the road improvements and all the other things that are done, across Anne Arundel County and the state. So again, thank you for joining us. If you have some time, we certainly invite you to stay along with us.
My apologies for cutting you off, but I think you had one more question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I'll get to it. I just saw his hand pop up. So, we're going to invoke the Howard rule and allow him to come in toward the end and get his question. But so Senator Cardin, just thank you. And then I see my colleague, Delegate Howard's question hand up.
Thank you, Mr.
Delegate
Chair.
Howard.
And I didn't try to last second get in there. It was up for a little bit, but that's okay. Senator Cardin, I just wanted to ask really quickly, and you and I 100% agree on it's time to take a path to return to normal as far as COVID is concerned. Yesterday, the United States Senate passed a resolution with 3 senators absent, Feinstein, Abel, and I forget the other senator's name that were absent, but the U.S. Senate passed a resolution to end the COVID emergency. I wanted to know where you were on that vote and just see if you'd like to elaborate a little bit on that. And
Well, Seth, thank you. First, if I could respond to Mike, and then I'll first, Mike, thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for your leadership. I appreciate that. And thank you for your service to our country. Just yesterday, I had conversations with 3 representatives of 3 countries. One, Germany. Germany is now providing lethal weapons to Ukraine, something they weren't doing and it said they weren't going to be able to do. They cut off Nord Stream 2, something that we wanted them to do. They're going to do 2% for their national defense commitments to NATO. These are things that we weren't able to get done before the Ukrainian invasion. I talked with another NATO ally, Turkey, who we've had our differences with. They're blocking Russian warships from getting through to the Black Sea. They're supplying help to NATO in regards to our campaign against Russia, and they're with us in regards to the United Nations. Then I talked to Finland. Finland's not a NATO partner, and they're providing, this is normally a neutral country, they're providing weapons to the Ukrainians. My point is that we are united, and I just want to point that out. That is going to be critically important in fighting Ukraine. Seth, in regards to the emergency declarations, the reason why, and I strongly oppose the repeal of the emergency declarations, mainly because of what it's involved there. Let me just give you one example. Telehealth services today, I don't know how many of you have heard from your constituents, but telehealth is working. I could give you some personal examples in my own family in this past week where telehealth has made a huge difference. Telehealth is making a difference in mental health services, which are on the increase dramatically. We've got to expand telehealth, not contract. And if we allow the emergency declaration to end, the exceptions for allowing telehealth to go forward that were adopted by the pandemic, we're going to make that permanent. We're going to make it permanent, but we haven't yet made it permanent. And if we let the emergency declaration expire, we would lose that service to our constituents in telehealth. So we need a bridge to get what needs to be done on a permanent basis done. But you are correct. It's time for us to end the emergency declaration issues, but we need transition time. That's why I voted against.
Okay, thank you. And I know that like things like extending telehealth would be individual legislative initiatives that could be continued through the House and the Senate. That's why I wanted to ask you about your vote. And just as a follow-up very quickly on Ukraine. And if you can't discuss this, I understand, but has there been any confirmation of a thermobaric weapons being used by Russia? And if there has been, through their MLRS or their grid eraser system, is that a red line? Has that been discussed as a redlining issue? Because that is a whole nother class of weapons system.
Right. First, in regards to the telehealth, I'm a original sponsor, and I introduced legislation to make telehealth permanent. So I'm right on that. We get classified briefings regularly. My next one will be Monday because of the weekend. We're not going to be, unless something develops, we won't have a classified briefing now. We can't do it remotely. We have to be in person for classified briefings. Right. At the last classified briefing, I can't tell you what was said at it, but we're reluctant to actually say red lines because we are doing everything we can not to raise the temperature here. We think our unity is working against Russia. We think a lot of what Mr. Putin says is just rhetoric. We want to protect ourselves, and believe me, every protection we have, we are very comfortable with our network of protection against any type of weapon that could be used. And we already saw with the episode at the nuclear reactor facility that Mr. Putin is reckless and did not plan this invasion the way you would normally plan a military invasion. So we are watching for lines to be crossed that we cannot tolerate, and we have plans to deal with all those circumstances in the event that happens. So I am very confident that our military and our intelligence community are on top of all these. And I must tell you, you can hear this from both Democrats and Republicans, very encouraging as to the transparency that the Biden administration has been doing with us, keeping us totally informed in the loop of what's happening.
But let me just say this, Senator, you and I and the president and I and even the folks in the Zoom committee, we may be on different sides of the political campfire on a lot of issues, but we want the United States and its allies and its president to be successful, and we stand united in that. And I wish you the best. And I thank you for coming here today. So please pass that along. We may disagree on many issues. That goes without saying. But when it comes to tyranny and facing down tyranny, we absolutely stand behind the president, the people of this country, our troops, and our allies abroad. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that. I will take that back. And I can tell you there's the same between my Republican and Democratic colleagues in the Senate. As I mentioned, I should have pointed out Senator Wicker and Senator Portman are both Republicans. So we are united, and I can assure you that we're going to do things to protect our country. And I very much appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Senator Cardin. It's always good to see you, sir.
So Senator Cardin, thank you again. And with that, we're going to transition to some of our bill hearings. And certainly as your time allows, we invite you to stay with us. And so with that, Delegate Saab, House Bill 1183.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, member of the delegation. For the record, I'm Delegate Sid Saab, representing District 33, here testifying on House Bill 1183, Student Mental Health Support System. As you know, the COVID pandemic has exacerbated rising mental health needs among children and youth. Schools closure, shift to online learning have limited access to education and social opportunities, as well as mental health services. Children and youth are experiencing soaring rates of anxiety, depression, trauma, loneliness, and higher than ever suicide rates. Mental health challenges can affect success at school and in life, yet few school-age children are able to get the help that they need. This bill is not new to this committee or delegation. Many of you remember this bill as the Preventive Measure Unit program from 2020. But before I start, I want to just bring to your attention that this bill, what the MGA show on their website is not the correct version of the bill due to some miscommunication and drafting error. And a lot of work has gone into this in 2020, and then we further improved it this session. So I'm extremely happy with the final product. You should have all received an email yesterday with the amended version. So the new title of the bill, instead of the Preventive Measure Pilot Program, is now the Student Mental Health Support System. The original bill was narrow and it only addressed middle schoolers. This bill addresses all school-aged children. It also replaced the term screener with behavioral health coordinators. And finally, it removed the Anne Arundel County Public Schools and replaced them with the Anne Arundel County Mental Health Agency. This bill, or as amended, is fully consistent with the recommendation from the Anne Arundel County Mental Health Task Force, with the focus on providing mental and behavioral support to school-aged children. So what this bill aims to do, it marries some of the existing pieces of the Anne Arundel County Crisis Center, and it expands on some of the pieces that they were already engaging in. This bill does not target any child by their demographics, but rather focuses on the families who are calling in and from other referrals agencies such as Cricket, which is the Community Source Initiative care teams. It also gets called from or referrals from the Department of Social Services, Juvenile Services, and any other child serving agencies. Even though the referral comes from multiple avenues, the intent of this bill is to focus on those families that are calling in. So by keeping access, and that is the one thing that we need to ensure, that any family that wants services for their child should be able to get it, and the mental health agency should be able to help coordinate that they are getting the right service at the right time. So under this bill, the mental health agency will be able to incorporate this program into their larger crisis system, so other funding sources can help the pieces that isn't going to be funded by this bill. There's also a reporting requirement in this bill, which is very clear. So this is one way to improve the mental behavioral health outcomes in our county. Anne Arundel County Public Schools submitted opposition to this bill, but unfortunately our emails with the new improved version crossed last night around 7 o'clock. So we've communicated with them, and I believe Jeanette Ortiz is on delegation today, and she can touch on that if she like, but she's sending it back to her committee to reconsider their position. And we also have the Anne Arundel County Mental Health Agency in delegation today, Adrian Mickler, and as well as Karen Gray. And hopefully they'll be able to answer some of the questions that I can't, because they are doing a fantastic job in their own agencies. And I couldn't be proud of what they have accomplished and how accessible they have been, not just to me, to all the citizens of Anne Arundel County that needed the help. So with that, I ask the delegation a favorable report on House Bill 1183.
All right, thank you, Delegate Saab. Should we open it up for questions, or did you have someone else that needed to testify on behalf of this bill?
I think Adrian Mickler would be next to testify. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Mickler.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, delegation. My name is Adrian Mickler, and I would like to testify in support of this bill. As the Mental Health Director for Anne Arundel County, I can attest to the increased need for children's mental health services. The need was evident prior to the pandemic, and COVID has exacerbated this demand. We've taken many steps as a system and community to address these needs, but the demand still outweighs the capacity. The Student Mental Health Support System will leverage some of the lessons we have learned and provide a mechanism to further support our children. I believe that Anne Arundel County is in a unique position to pilot this program. The Anne Arundel County Mental Health Agency in particular has been fortunate to either co-chair or participate in several initiatives where the focus has been the need for children's mental health services. This bill will allow us to demonstrate how aligning the lessons we learn in these initiatives can support our efforts to best serve our children and help them navigate a very complex healthcare system. It will also enhance our ability to analyze the data and to further identify areas where successful outcomes can be obtained by expanding specific programs and enhance our system of care in the most meaningful way. We understand that resources are limited. Therefore, using the data as requested in this bill, we can be strategic in our focus for making system improvements for our children. Thank you.
Thank you for that testimony, Ms. Bickler. Are there any questions? Delegate Henson.
Chair, thank you, Delegate Saab, for bringing the bill. I have two questions, if the chair will permit me. The first is, looking at the bill on page 2, lines 5 through 7, it says the purpose of the program is to establish preventative measures unit in middle schools to monitor students who have behavioral, social, or legal difficulties in or out of school. And then it goes on the ways that the program would do that. Specifically on legal difficulties, juvenile records are sealed records, and we've made the policy choice to keep those records confidential so that when people, attain the age of majority and move on with their life, that they have the ability to do so after you gained all the, faculties and cognitive abilities that you get when you're an adult that you don't have as a child. With regard to monitoring children with legal difficulties, does the bill have a mechanism for accessing those records? Do you all intend to look at things that should be confidential? How will you monitor that?
Delegate, are you looking at the amended version or are you looking at the original bill?
I don't have access to the amended version. If it went out last night, that wasn't made available to me. Is that still in the amended version?
No, that's not in the amended version. I'm sorry. That's why I mentioned it earlier in the testimony that the bill has been completely. The bill that is on the website that you were looking at is actually a bill which was the original version back from 2020, which was amended. And when we requested the bill this year, it was the amended version, so it didn't make it. So none of that stuff is in the bill. And I'm happy to share. So I will definitely, and I'm sorry because we were still working on some of it, this week, as late as yesterday or the day before, we're still making some changes to make sure that all the things all the issues that were, that people brought to us, that they were addressed. So none of that is in there.
I appreciate your work to what it sounds like make a great work product. It does make it very difficult to have a meaningful hearing when the bill that we reviewed in advance of the hearing today was one that doesn't seem to be the version of the bill that's being offered for consideration. But I'll move to my second question. And the only fiscal note that we have access to this time is the fiscal note from session 2020. And it indicated that the cost would be $242,000, $247,000. It gave some numbers in the ballpark of 250,000. Do you anticipate that the fiscal note will be similar this year, or with the changes to the bill, can you give us any idea of an estimated cost?
Again, sorry again for the confusion. Again, let me just go back to you first. So and again, it was sent, the original, the amended version was sent last night. And no, there shouldn't be, because we're mirroring and kind of merging a lot of the stuff with the mental health agency, I expect the fiscal note to be a lot lower than that.
I look forward to an opportunity to review
Thank you. Absolutely. And I will make sure that if you didn't have access to the email, I'll have my office drop off the amended version, and we can discuss it further. This bill is being heard on Monday in Ways and Means, so hopefully you'll have a chance before that to look at it too.
Delegate Bagnall, followed by Delegate Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing this bill. And unfortunately, because we did get the amended version so late, I haven't really had the opportunity to fully understand it. But I had a couple questions just based on the amended language that we received. I greatly appreciate your efforts to create a more robust mental health system. You know, that's a passion of mine, particularly for our adolescent communities. But there's reference to the goals and recommendations of the student mental health support system. And one, I was wondering if you could make those recommendations known to this delegation so that we can understand how they would be reflected and implemented in the bill. And my second question.
Can you
go
back?
ahead.
I'm sorry, I have my internet just cut off for a second, so I didn't hear.
Sure.
Sorry.
So there's reference to implement the goals and recommendations of the Arundel Mental Health Task Force. Would it be possible to make those recommendations and goals known to this delegation so that we can understand sort of how this bill would be implemented?
Yes. Adrian, would you mind taking that question?
Absolutely. Thank you. I can certainly forward a copy of the final report that we presented to the board and the county. I believe it was last year. The recommendations are outlined there.
Thank you so much. And my second question, because it looks like this is a support system that is focused on families and wraparound services, if I'm understanding that correctly. But on the third page of the amended language, there's reference to a report that with data on the demographics of children participating in the program, and the implicit bias did not factor into the selection of children. So is this a program that's focused on families, on specific targeted children? Is this an opt-in, opt-out, volunteer? It's just unclear what this program looks like and what that report would seek to do and who that report would be provided to.
Thank you for the question. So yes, so the reason we have this in the language, because of some of the opposition that we've had in the past regarding to make sure that there isn't an implicit bias with the selection. And this is almost like a moot point, because the way the referral comes in, as I mentioned in my testimony, that it comes in from families calling in. So we're not targeting any children in particular. It's families calling in, but it's also the other referrals from the other agencies. So, you know, it's kind of in the report, but it doesn't really apply because it is families calling in. And the intent of the bill is for the mental health agency to concentrate on those who are calling in, as such as families in particular. And we also wanted to make sure that to prove that there was no implicit bias, just to make sure we cover all the angles and make sure that this is a successful program that is really aimed to help the children in need at the right time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. And as I flip through, Delegate Saab, thank you so much. Some of the questions that I had, and I'm searching for our two delegation members who went before me, covered some of those. So let's start off with clarification. You said that the Maryland General Assembly's website is wrong on your bill. The Maryland General Assembly's website does not have the correct version. So can you please tell us, for clarification, so I make sure I'm looking at the right one, what is your amendment number?
The amendment number is 1183/636510/1.
And that amendment is correct, right?
Yes.
And so
yes.
And you're saying that this amendment is just going towards House Bill 1183. Are you implying that 1183 on the website is not correct, or just that we need to apply the amendment?
So the amendment strikes the entire bill and replaces it with this amendment.
Yeah.
It was easier for me to do that than withdraw the bill and put another bill, because by the time I realized that they had the wrong version, or the reprint was different, it was past the deadline.
For rules.
Yeah.
For
so
sure.
I wanted to make sure. So that's one of the reasons that we did what we did. I know it's a little complicated, but it was a decision I had to make, not to hopefully not to delay this because.
Thank you.
It's an important
Thank you.
bill.
And then I want to also thank Ms. Mickler. You had mentioned that you will be sending the report to the delegation so that we all have a copy of it and we're all, as they say, singing from the same sheet music. So we can have that. Thank you so much for sending that. And you and Mr. Saab, Delegate Saab, you have sent all of the differences to AACPS because they had written a pretty thorough opposition letter. I assume that you're saying to your first bill without amendments?
Correct. And I think AACPS is on. I saw Jeanette here. If she wants to chime in.
But they just received that yesterday is what you're saying, right? Last night?
Right. So I wasn't expecting any opposition, thinking that they had. So she's taking it back to her board or committee for review. But since they've been taken out of the bill, I don't expect any opposition.
And then just finally, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize, thank you. You said that this bill had been passed in 2020, but it sounds like with your amendment, this is a totally different bill. So in essence, this bill was not passed in 2020. This is a totally different bill. Is that true?
So the amendment, so I don't know if you were.
I was not.
You were not. Okay. So in 2020, when the original, just a little history then. So when I presented the bill, there was obvious opposition from AACPS, WLCP, NAACP to just make sure that those things. So we addressed those issues with the amended version. And I don't remember the bill. So this amendment was put on a different bill. It passed the House, but it didn't pass the Senate. So the bill itself wasn't passed, but the amendment was tacked onto a different bill.
Thank you so much. If you could get that information to the rest of us, because this is a little bit muddy now, I think, for everyone as we try to put all this together. So if you could get all of that information, because it sounds like 1183 is totally changed. The amendment you're talking about was on a completely different bill, which we don't have the year or House bill number for. So that way we can really track this more easier. And Mr. Chair, I see Ms. Ortiz from AACPS has turned on her camera and she had been referred to earlier. Thank you. I don't know if she had something.
All right. So Ms. Ortiz, if you have a comment, you're certainly welcome to make it.
Good morning. For the record, Jeanette Ortiz, Legislative and Policy Counsel for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. And so I think I can offer a little bit of clarification on the 2020 happenings. So yes, our opposition testimony to the bill is as it was introduced and on the General Assembly website. As Delegate Saab indicated, it was the House Bill 1183 is a reintroduction of House Bill 535 from 2020 as originally introduced. Then I worked with the Education Subcommittee at that time to significantly amend the 2020 bill, House Bill 535, to address our concerns and better align it with the district's mental health priorities. And so, as has already been mentioned, we just received the amendments yesterday, and so I have provided them to staff for review. I can say that upon initial review, they do appear to substantially mirror the amendments from 2020, but a lot has changed in the last 2 years with the onset of COVID and everything. And so I've just asked staff to review to determine, if we're okay with them, if we would withdraw our opposition, et cetera. And so certainly I'm happy. I will certainly circle back with the delegation once staff has had the opportunity to do so. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, those remarks, Ms. Ortiz. All right, so not seeing any other questions, we're going to move on to House Bill 1193. Delegate Saab.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is a lot easier or a lot more fun, I guess, because it deals with licensing of food establishment waiver for open air markets. So for the record, good morning again, delegation, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair. For the record, I'm Delegate Sid Saab here testifying on House Bill 1193. So this bill came before the General Assembly last year It wasn't a delegation bill. And it was an attempt to address an issue that was applied, that had applied to open air market businesses. So this year I'm bringing it more of a delegation bill. And after working with Councilman Hare, we've narrowed down the solution that we've had last year, some of the issues that we've had, and we've narrowed down the solution that many open air markets have encountered. So just to give you a background, experts suggest that as preventive measure against the spread of COVID, that people are far less likely to catch virus in outside settings. So open air market, therefore, provided a safer for shoppers to congregate and buy locally. So a lot of them, I wouldn't say boomed, but a lot of them became a lot more popular place for people to meet and to buy. And it was also a very attractive place for our older population. So while it's grown to be very attractive, some of those businesses in Anne Arundel County hit some roadblocks because some qualifying definition of what food service retail licenses, which they needed. But unfortunately, the code in Anne Arundel County or in some of the localities, it requires them to have certain things because they fell under that license, such as specific flooring material and 3-compartment sinks. So there's an open market in my district that really brought this to Councilman Hare's attention, and her and I worked on this. And they were selling refrigerated items throughout, COVID. They started selling it, and the health department came in and told them that they couldn't sell pre-packed products because they don't have food service license. And to get that, they needed to have a specific floor and a 3-compartment sink. So this is what happened. So even though this business sells high quality refrigeration, cottage food, and they have a license, food cottage, and a cottage food license, and they sell locally sourced food, they would have to spend an absurd amount of money to redo floors, which doesn't really make any difference, and also have a 3-compartment sink. And since MDH delegates licensing authorities to the food establishment and local health departments, this bill will enable the county, it's an enabling legislation, to give them the flexibility to exempt certain requirements. So this includes waiving those requirements, such as flooring and sink. And most notably, the language of the bill says that the local department may waive these requirements for open air markets. So again, it gives them flexibility. It allows them to decide on a case-by-case basis. So with that, I think this is a great bill for our agriculture community. It's also a great bill for small business. It's a business-friendly bill, and it helps a lot of the open air market businesses in Anne Arundel County. And with that, I ask the committee, a delegation, for a favorable report on House Bill 1193. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Doug Saab, do you have anyone testifying on behalf of this bill, or is that it? Questions.
I do not.
Okay, so with that,
Councilman Hare had sent, sorry, excuse me, Mr. Chairman. So Councilman Hare sent a written testimony for the delegation. And if you don't have it again, I think she did, but I will be happy to share it if you don't have it.
I did see the letter from Councilwoman here, Delegate Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in years past, and the delegation's taken a lot of great bipartisan measures to help this type of cottage industry move forward as far as water hookups, where I remember, I think it was, and I'm not trying to call anybody out, I think it was Delegate Kipke had a bill that would allow businesses like this to have water tanks and not have to have a water hookup and those type of things. So just for clarification, this just gives the department flexibility after review on things like a triple sink versus a double sink, and so they can waive some of these requirements. But just give me a little bit more clarification.
So yeah, I mean, to get the food establishment license, you fall under, if you're selling this particular product, you need a particular license. And to get the particular license, you have to have those requirements, which are the sinks, particular flooring. So in that particular settings, they don't need it. So this, and the Anne Arundel County Health Department, when they went in, they don't have the flexibility to exempt this waiver. So this bill, since it's the state, since MDH delegates the authority to the localities, local jurisdiction, this bill will add this little bit more flexibility for Anne Arundel County to decide on specific requirements. And, you know, if you don't need if you're selling it outside in an open air market and you're selling something that pre-refrigerated stuff, you don't really need a sink. There's no, it's just, you know, just give them flexibility.
We've taken these type of measures before. I appreciate you bringing the bill, and I appreciate that there's still a system in there for review by MDH. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you,
Delegate Bagnall. And then we're going to move to Delegate Guyton, who's been waiting patiently for the last bill hearing of the morning. Delegate Bagnall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know that we had this bill before, and there was opposition from, I think, from the health department and from from MACHO. Have you addressed that opposition?
So you and I are on the same committee. So yeah, this bill actually came to our committee last year, and some of the concern with the health officer was the I guess the safety issues, which rightfully so that they had. So one reason, one point is I made this more of a delegation, but we also put it in a completely different section of the law. And I think Matt did a great work with us, Matt Carpenter, our counsel. And if you want to maybe touch on that a little bit more, just to make sure that I'm not 100% sure, but I think we moved it into a different code where it just gives the local health department the autonomy to waive it or not. Am I correct, Matt?
Yes, Delegate Saab. So last year's bill was an exception, a blanket exception that would be given to any of these individuals. This, as it's written this year, it's, as the delegate mentioned, it's enabling legislation so that the department can go in case and determine whether or not they're deserving of a license.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on to our final bill hearing this morning is House Bill 749, Natural Resources Maryland Park Explorers Grant Pilot Program Establishment. And I guess this is a bill that impacts both Baltimore County and Anne Arundel County. So Delegate Guyton is going to speak to that bill. Delegate Guyton.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, my friends in Anne Arundel County, for letting me visit your delegation this morning. I don't know that I'll ever have the chance to do it again, so I appreciate the invitation. I'm here to present and request your consideration of House Bill 749, which, as your delegation chair mentioned, establishes a Maryland Park Explorers pilot program, which, at the request of Anne Arundel County Rec and Parks, includes you and your delegation in your county. So we know that according to the Sierra Club, there are 28 million children in the US who do not live within 10 miles of green recreational space. Prior to COVID, the American child on average spent estimated less than 10 minutes outside playing outdoors, but an average of 7 to 8 hours a day inside on their technology and their computers. And I just want to point out, this data is from before virtual schooling started. So the evidence of negative mental, behavioral, social, and physical health effects of all of this time in front of screens has been well documented for years. But we also know that it's not just that these problems are being caused because of what they are doing, being in front of the computer all day, but it's because what they're actually not doing. They're not going outside. They're not interacting with the natural environment. So House Bill 749 will help counties encourage children to basically do that, to get outside in outdoor play and exploration. It will help us fight childhood obesity by building physically healthier children while also expanding their knowledge of the environment and promoting social and behavioral health. So this is win-win-win for everyone. I do want to say that we know that environmental education that is great for our kids, both their health and the health of the environment, but most of our exposure is inequitable. So this bill particularly requires that these programs we're setting up through this pilot prioritize children in areas that lack green space and equitable access to outdoor environmental experiences. And we will also collect demographic data about the participants. So thank you so much for allowing me to visit. And I request a favorable report from Anne Arundel County Delegation on House Bill 749 to establish the County Park Explorers Pilot Program. I do believe I have Director Lays with me today to support the bill, and we're happy to answer any questions. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Delegate Guyton. Are there any questions from any members of the delegation? Seeing none, and I know that, oh, I see one, Vice Chair Bagnall, and then I will ask Ms. Lays to certainly comment when she has her time a little bit later in the agenda, if she'd like to offer any comments regarding that. All right, Delegate Bagnall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a very quick question. You've already had the hearing, is that correct? Have you already received a letter of support from the Baltimore delegation?
We are doing that today. So actually, as soon as I leave you, I'm going to Baltimore County Delegation.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. So next up, we have the Anne Arundel County Mental Health Agency with Ms. Michler.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, delegation. My name is Adrienne Michler, and I represent the Anne Arundel County Mental Health Agency. Presenting with me today will be Catherine Gray, the Clinical and Deputy Director for the agency, and Jennifer Corbin, the Director of our agency's Crisis Response System. Our agency is a private, not-for-profit entity serving Anne Arundel County as the Mental Health Authority. Together with our local addiction authority partner in the Department of Health, we form the local Behavioral Health Authority. In healthcare, we continue to pivot our operations to accommodate safe responses to COVID, and we're in a better place in that regard than we were a year ago and the year before that. But it has taken a toll. Self-reported anxiety and depression reflected a threefold increase during the height of COVID. And while that's trending downward, it is still significantly above pre-pandemic estimates. Individuals who had never accessed the mental health system before are reaching out for help, and over half of the services provided are being delivered via telehealth. Our mental well-being is a top priority for the entire community. We hear time and time again in almost all of our county's planning efforts that mental health is a top priority. Our agency likes to consider this the silver lining of COVID. More than ever, individuals are aware of the importance of their mental well-being. For us, this is an opportunity to enhance our prevention efforts and increase our education activities. I believe stigma is being reduced as conversations about mental health increase. It's now normal to talk about our mental wellness. And while we enjoy a robust and mature crisis system in Anne Arundel County, our goal is to prevent crisis by getting people to the most appropriate level of care. That is one of the most important things that our crisis system does, but there's still much more work to be done. We know that health disparities exist. For us, this is an opportunity to develop programs where lack of access to care is most apparent. We work with our providers to enhance our continuum of care, offering incentives where we can, technical support, and quality trainings for their staff. Through the partnerships we have built with other county departments, we're able to leverage services and programs to serve even more residents and assure that our efforts aren't duplicated. This is imperative as we recognize the importance of social determinants of health, such as housing and transportation, and the impact those have on our healthcare. Our job is to break down any barrier we can and help our residents navigate these systems so that they can be successful in their treatment goal. It's also important that we identify critical data elements and collect that data. We need to be able to analyze this information to help us design programs where there is the most need and enhance our systems to make the most impact. We know that the best opportunities are in collaborative models and leveraging best practices. We use data to help us identify root causes so that our solutions will help us provide sustainable change. And finally, one of our most valuable assets is acknowledging that there is no one-size-fits-all in healthcare. We are a human service, and pathways to recovery take many forms. Flexibility is the area for our agency where we shine. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jen.
Good morning, Jennifer Corbin, Director of Anne Arundel County Crisis Response. While I'm here to probably explain to you our numbers are soaring, I don't want to look at the negative to that, but I want to look at the positive. As Adrienne explained, it's reducing stigma, talking more in the community about how COVID and just events in the community are affecting our residents, and that we have been able to get ahead of this and provide them with the resources they need to get connected. So while I'm going to tell you today how high the numbers are and what we're doing to handle that, I want you to see that the positive is that people are reaching out. I know
Ms. Corbin, I
Yes.
just want to remind you that we had you, the two of you both for 5 minutes. So you've got about 2 minutes left for your presentation.
Okay, so wanted to just talk a little bit about how our numbers are up and what we're doing to help that. The positive is that we have been able to meet people more in the community. And I know one of the concerns has been the connection with police using our CIT officers who are specially trained so that people who may be apprehensive to go through the 911 system. We're seeing an increase in our warm line calls where people are calling in, asking for alternative ways to address the mental health. And in doing that, we've been able to show a really positive community policing model in where our clinicians and specially trained officers can go out and meet with individuals and link them to the treatment that they need. In our Safe Station program, we are continuing to see a 70% connected to treatment, which is really, really positive. Our numbers are trending pretty stable from last year. And the one thing that I would say is that we are starting, because we're so successful, to see less people presenting at a fire or police station and actually calling into the warm line, initiating their own treatment through our crisis system, which is positive during COVID, because that means that fire's not having to deal with as many calls and that we're able to do it independently out in the community, linking people to treatment. And so with that, I'll just say that while our call volume is up, we seem to be handling things well. And again, the positive piece is that people know how to reach out. And I think that's why we're seeing our numbers be so high. I was gonna turn it over to Catherine if we have time.
We don't, but I just want to thank Ms. Michler for doing double duty this morning and you, Ms. Corbin, for providing us that information. With that, we're going to have to transition to the Anne Arundel County Parks and Recs with Ms. Lays, but we're certainly willing to have you guys back later in the session. Ms. Lays.
Good morning, everybody. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, so I am Jessica Lays, the Director for Anne Arundel County Department of Recreation and Parks. I'm very grateful to be here today to just give you an overview of Rec and Parks at Anne Arundel County. The first slide, can everybody see the slides?
Yes.
The first slide is a pictorial of our department organizational structure. As our name suggests, we are Recreation and Parks. So the divisions on the recreation side are things like sports, programs in recreations, childcare. On the park side, we have our agricultural preservation, our county trail system, and our regional and community parks. The mission of Anne Arundel County's Recreation and Parks is to create opportunities to enjoy life, explore nature, and restore health and well-being. We do this to enrich the lives of all county residents in Anne Arundel County. In 2020, we received an accreditation from the National Parks and Recreation Association. This is a great accomplishment that demonstrates our highest level of service within our field. And we are one of 5 agencies in the state of Maryland to have this great honor. Our success, though, relies greatly on our resources and having adequate resources. In FY22, we had 137 full-time positions that were supplemented by 923 part-time seasonal staff and hundreds of volunteers that we rely on a daily basis. Our FY22 approved budget on the operating side was $37.2 million, of which $9.3 million was from a self-sustaining child care fund that is funded through the fees of child care. On the capital side, we were approved for $49 million, which means that we have 51 active capital projects right now. That's only possible through the continued support of the state. Specifically, program Open Space was $6 million, and the new local parks and playground infrastructure money provided in the last legislative session of $9 million. While this is a great amount of resources for the county, we are still far below national averages. What you'll see in this pictorial is that we are about 50% of the national average for full-time equivalence positions and 46% in operating expenditures. So while we may have 2 times as many acres of parkland to maintain and operate, we continue to fall short on the operating side. As we invest in the infrastructure, we must address these operational impacts and provide adequate funding, not only for the infrastructure, but also for the operating side of the house. Some highlights of our department: we manage 12,470 acres in parks and natural resource areas, 14,000 acres of agricultural land, which is 137 parks and natural areas that are open to the public on a daily basis. This is 6 regional parks: Quiet Waters, Kinder Farm, Jug Bay, Downs, Fort Smallwood, and Lake Waterford. 23 public access water sites, 3 boat ramps, and 47 miles of multi-use trail, which we consider our largest vertical park. In 2020, we had 2.6 million visitations to our park system, which was a 40% increase, a similar experience to what you've heard from the State Parks Commission. On the recreation side, we manage 50 before and after childcare centers, 2 swim centers, 2 rec centers, 2 ice rinks, 2 stadiums, sports complexes, 29 turf fields in partnership with our local Board of Education, 2 golf courses, and 2 equestrian centers. So through our park system and our rec amenities, we literally provide program for thousands of residents every single day. Specifically, 2,800 families in our childcare, 6,000 children in our summer camps, 150,000 athletes, and 2 million people in our park system. To say we're busy is an understatement. To summarize the Department of Recreation and Parks, we simply here make life better. That's what our goal is. That's what we do every single day. And we appreciate your continued support of our efforts. Thank you so much for the opportunity to give you a heads up on Rec and Parks. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Slaves, for that excellent presentation. And we'll make sure that we get that out to all of the members if they haven't seen it. I see a number of hands, which we'll get to. And then I will remind everyone that we still have 1 LBI. So with that, we'll start with Delegate Saab.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I was just wanted to make a comment when Adrian and Catherine and Jen came on. So I can either wait or I can do it now. It's up to you. I know this is a different subject we're on.
Okay, let's come back to that. Then Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Jessica, for what you do. I know it's one of those sought after jobs. But on a serious note, so I've been getting calls from organizations from Bakken to Lakeshore to Crofton about they needed buildings built, and then the county said, well, we don't want to own them. And then they came up with the money and said, well, we'll build some of these buildings. And now the county is telling them, no, it's not equitable because you have the money, and they're not even asking for county money. So I don't understand why. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what they're telling me, but they're telling me they have the money, they have the resources, they want to build the building, give it to the county, but they're being told no. Is that accurate, or can you speak to that for me about some of the improvements they want to make with their own money?
Absolutely. So these community associations are running programs on public property. And part of our responsibility is to make sure that public property is in equitable and fair usage. So what we're trying to do is have policies that don't allow the areas that have more donations and better athletic organizations to be building large indoor facilities, while the areas of underserved communities don't have the same amenities. So while we're not opposed to communities dedicating and donating funds to make our public property a better better place, we are trying to make sure that we're consistent in the policy and that we don't have some organizations that have state-of-the-art indoor facilities while other organizations aren't afforded the same opportunity. We do partner with these agencies to make improvements upon their public property and to work with them to meet the need. But we also try to be consistent across the board in what our community parks look like from an amenity standpoint.
Well, I understand the intent, but by that rationale, you're discouraging people that want to provide their own personal resources to improving an area and discouraging any sort of donations or charity or that kind of thing because they know it can't be used. So I think I understand your intent. I really do. But by your rationale, we're telling everybody, well, nobody can improve until everybody can improve. And that's we all should be trying to be building up instead of keeping everybody at a certain level. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Gonna go back very quickly to Delegate Saab.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I see that Catherine and Jen and Adrian are hopefully still on. I think you are. Just wanted to, it's more of a comment and a heartfelt thank you for all you do. I've seen you for the last 8 years come to our delegation, but I've also seen you and your agencies in action, whether I needed you for help for a constituent or we needed you for help legislatively. And I just want to tell you that the Anne Arundel County citizens owe you a huge debt of gratitude for your work, and we really thank you. So thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, Delegate Saab, and again, Ms. Michler, as I said, I appreciate you actually performing double duty this morning. And to you and your team, thank you for what you do. I think I saw another number of hearts flash up on the screen, which just sort of kind of echoes those comments. So with that, we're going to transition to Delegate Jones, who's going to present the LBI for the Summit School.
Thank you so much, Chairman. And I know that we have an action-packed agenda and we've gotten a lot in and we still have some stuff to go. So I really want to turn it over to Teresa Hessler, who's on the line. Are you here? There you are. And she is going to present and tell us a little bit more about the Summit School and their 2020 legislative bond initiative. And I believe that all of your offices also received some parent testimonials, but Ms. Hessler?
Thank you, Delegate Jones. Good morning, members of the delegation. For the record, my name is Teresa Hessler, and I am here on behalf of the Summit School. Thank you for allowing me to speak today regarding our 2022 legislative bond initiative. The Summit School is a Type 1 full-day special education and related services program for children with specific learning differences in grades 1 through 8. By supporting this LBI, not only will you help children in Anne Arundel County and their families, you will help to empower the children of Maryland grow into thriving adults. Currently, the Summit School serves just a small fraction of students who could benefit from individualized, research-based instruction tailored to meet the needs of bright students who learn in a different way. While Summit could serve more students, many must wait until appointments are available due to a lack of space. The requested funding will be put towards building facilities for Summit School students and the community, allowing for expanded enrollment, testing, tutoring, e-tutoring, webinars, and seminars through the Summit Resource Center. The building will have classroom space, science labs, and an innovation lab for robotics and STEM, allowing expanded education and growth, lessening overcrowding, and creating better opportunities for learning. Just as Summit teaches students to reach beyond their comfort level to learn and grow, the school must also grow. Summit's LBI success will transform the campus as well as transform more lives than ever before. When mentioning the Summit School in conversation, it is more than likely you will find someone that you know either attended the school or knows someone that does. Personally, I've recently learned I know at least 4 people with stories related to the school, and their testimonials are all the same. Quote, "The Summit School changed my life or the life of my son, daughter, brother, neighbor, sister, or friend." I'd ask that each of you please take a few moments to review the powerful testimonies of Summit School parents that were mentioned prior to this hearing. Their voices, more than mine ever will, can confirm how important your support of this LBI really is. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hustler, for that testimony, and thank you for sending the additional information with those testimonials from parents.
Thank
So with that, there's one more thing that's not on the agenda, but I think, I've had a chance to speak to most people. So just kind of wanted to give the floor to Delegate Bartlett for a moment, and then we can, conclude after that. Delegate Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, I believe many members of the delegation are aware of the work or the recent publication from the Baltimore Sun with an apology to the African-American community. And I have to say, if you haven't read the apology, please read it. It is long, but it is thorough. And they go over all the years of injustice reporting they committed. And so it is an apology, but it is also an analogy. It's also they chronologically go through and explain, or not explain, but they list the wrongdoing. So it's an apology that is very specific and time captured, even as recent. It is not just in the 1800s. It's the 1800s, the 1950s, 1960s, 2000, 2018. It's really well done. And it actually, I'll tell you, it touched my heart personally. I thank them for doing that personally, brought tears to my eyes, quite frankly. And I would like to, even though I know Mr. Chair has already spoke with most of you, I'd like to publicly request that the Anne Arundel County House delegation present a citation for this work that was done by the Baltimore Sun. The Capital Gazette also did an apology back in June, which was very well done with the former editor, Rick Hutzel. There is going to be on March 11th, the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dinner will be held on March 11th, and the Baltimore Sun will be commended at that event. And I request that this citation on behalf of the delegation be presented then, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Bartlett. Is there, and I know we don't have to vote by member, but is there a motion that we do that as a delegation?
I'll move.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded, and a few others. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so with that, we will draft a citation from the delegation that will be presented to the Baltimore Sun, thanking them for their last Sunday's apology. And I think it's going to be really moving for me to, as the first delegation in the state to do this. We in Anne Arundel County will be in the vanguard, and I think it's appropriate that when folks do the right thing, we acknowledge that. And so hopefully, that'll be a good thing. So thank you very much, everyone. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.